Thank you. Candidate Schaefer. I think you're on mute, Candidate Schaefer.
Candidate Schaefer, you need to go and unmute.
There we are. Sorry about that. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, the League, for being here and putting us on. My name is Bo Schaefer. I'm a libertarian, which may not be familiar to most people, but you can look it up and see what we're all about. We are a third party. I'm mostly running to bring a different voice into Boulder County. Right now, there's half a dozen races that don't even have any contenders. It's all uncontested. There's nobody else that ever speaks up in Boulder County, it seems like, rather than the progressive Democrats, which I don't really have a problem with. They're good people, they do good things, but I just feel that there needs to be another voice in the county. There are other things in the county that go on, and libertarians can bring a very interesting and different viewpoint, and I think a lot of people might align with it, or they might not. We will find out in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Our first question, we will begin with Candidate Schaefer for 1 minute. Many candidates talk about their areas of expertise. What parts of county government processes or what issues are a larger learning curve for you?
My expertise is along the lines of the environment and water. I would like to say I have a minor in government. I've been around in the party for a long time. I've been down to Capitol Hill. I was familiar with the clerks and with all the different governments for many years. I've kind of been out of it for a few years, and this is my one chance to get back in and see if I can make a difference. But my experience in the environment, my experience in water, I was on the left-hand water board for 12 years, an elected position. I know this county very well, and I know the environment and water in this county, and those are two of the most important things. I mean, there are other things that are important that are national and statewide, but here in this county, those are two of the biggest and the most important things, and I think that I have a good expertise that I can bring to that, besides my libertarian views, which are somewhat different.
Thank you. Candidate Stoltzman.
Thank you. Coming from the municipal side, I've been learning a lot since 2013. And so I've had the good fortune of getting to work with community members, serving on the Denver Regional Council of Governments, even in a leadership role as chair, and serving on the Mile High Flood District. So I've had a lot of experience with budgeting and administration. Similarly, in my professional experience in chemical engineering, I've had a lot of experience with project management and working with other employees and even managing people. At the county, there is a learning curve because the state law is a little different than the local municipal law. So just really coming up to speed on the state legislative differences is taking a little bit of time, and I'm being sure to study at the library. So you might see me at the Louisville Library studying that section of code. And then also one area that's a little different between county and city is just how important human services are. And the good news is we have a fantastic county staff that's very committed to working for our communities. And so it will really be about making sure that communities across the county are being heard and that the county staff are clear on the policies we need to take forward.
Thank you. Our second question, our next question, we will begin with Candidate Stoltzman. With climate change models predict that we can expect more disasters in Boulder County, like the recent Marshall Fire. What would you do as commissioner to help Marshall Fire and other future disaster survivors rebuild their homes and communities more quickly after disaster? You have 1 minute.
Great question. So the recent devastation from the climate fires really led me to run for county commissioner because we found ourselves flat-footed in a number of ways. So we really have to work on our response and mitigation in advance because we know we'll have more floods, we'll have more fires across the county. And so there are a number of things we need to do to be more prepared to reduce our risk and help mitigate things. But even with that, unfortunately, we know we will see future disasters. And so some of the things we can do across the county is to really focus on programs to help families with decarbonization and rebuilding. We can streamline our building codes and make sure that we have cohorts like we are just now starting with our local communities. So the codes are more similar and builders know what to expect from city to city. But we've really got to get going on reducing carbon emissions in buildings so that we can reduce the risk for future generations from these climate disasters.
Candidate Schaefer for 1 minute.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In my feelings, I believe that a lot of the damage in Marshall Fire could have been prevented if people would have done the proper mitigation of combustibles. There was also a chance to stop it when it was a grass fire before it jumped to the town, and it wasn't stopped when it was just a grass fire. But that's fire under the bridge, whatever. I think right now there's two issues on the ballot: to raise more money to increase taxes to pay to help this stuff, which is, it's a good feeling, but honestly, these people should have taken care of it themselves. It's the libertarian philosophy is you need to be responsible for yourself because the government's not always going to be there to help you. And so I'd like to see that money rather spent on making things better after the burn, to do things to prevent that happening again, to get things so that it doesn't happen and we don't have to do this. And a lot of that will involve having the people do their own work, but just provided by the government.
For our next question, this was submitted by our co-sponsor, YWCA of Boulder County. This question will be directed to candidate Schaefer. The YWCA's mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. How do you plan to support women and girls of color in our community? What will you do to address the inequities they face in Boulder County? For 1 minute.
That's the most interesting question. The most that I have to say about that is I firmly believe, like Morgan Freeman, anytime you mention race, you're being racist. Race should not be a factor. It shouldn't be mentioned. It shouldn't be around. And so I think a lot of why there is racism around is because everybody's pointing to it. Says this black was the first elected, or this woman was the first that, or this Hispanic was the first that. We need to stop that. We need to say this is the first person that got this, or this is I don't really know how to deal with that, but I do believe, just like Morgan Freeman, that every time you mention race, it just increases it. So when I fill out forms, I don't put race on it. I don't mention race. I very seldom ever even talk about it because it's not the kind of a subject. I mean, to me, it's ridiculous, but that's my feeling on it. I will support helping all the minorities, especially women. Women were the last to get the vote, for God's sakes. Anyway, I would help minorities as much as possible, but that's the way it is in the world.
Candidate Stoltzman for 1 minute.
Thank you. Representation really matters, and giving people opportunity to serve and lifting up diverse community is really critically important. The county has done great work in addressing equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we're not even close to getting started, even though there's been such tremendous effort and progress made. We have to do a lot through our purchasing policies, through promoting people in leadership in our hiring practices. We have to make sure that our boards and commissions that people have access to representation. I can tell you, I'm the first female mayor of the city of Louisville, and that didn't happen until 2019. And there have been a lot of really great women who have lived in town before me that would have been great at serving as well. And I'll tell you that when I present to groups of kids, you can just see the faces of the little girls light up when they find out I'm the mayor. And they are so excited and they ask me so many questions, and you can just hear them thinking about how they can be mayor or they can be president because they see me standing in front of them talking about it. So I believe we need to give people more opportunity, and we really need to be deliberate about this work.
For our next question, we'll begin with candidate Stoltzman. Please share about a time you changed your mind about a social or policy issue. How has that experience impacted how you think about community engagement and policy decisions? For 1 minute.
It's a great question. So data and information are really the two things, and community sentiment, I guess, would be the third thing that really have been able to change my mind in the past. The example that immediately comes to mind is related to the fire and very near and dear to some people. People asked us to reduce the cost of rebuilding. And there was a lot of urban legend around which things cost more and less. But when you really looked at the data behind rebuilding, indoor fire suppression was a very expensive cost, indoor fire sprinklers in single family homes. And when you looked at the data, it doesn't have that much of an advantage to life safety over smoke detectors. And in my time on council, I voted in favor of indoor fire sprinkling and had been convinced originally that it was a good thing for our community. But through the experience of the fire and what the families came out asking for, and really looking at the data on the return on investment, the likelihood that that would help people, I changed my mind.
Candidate Schaefer.
Yeah, could you read the question again, please?
Yes. Please share about a time you changed your mind on an issue or a social or policy issue, and how has that experience impacted how you think about community engagement and policy decisions?
I can't think of any specific time when I changed my mind, because I keep my mind kind of open all the time. I'm always willing to listen no matter what my most deep held beliefs are. I'm always willing to listen to somebody if they can speak the truth. The truth is very important to me. And if you can speak the truth and it changes my mind, I'll go that way. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm wrong. I had a mother who was afraid to admit that she was wrong, and she used to have a little sign that says, "I may not be always right, but I'm certainly never wrong." And I don't quite feel that way. I feel that I can be wrong a lot, and I'm certainly willing to be swayed by arguments that are valid. But as far as changing my opinion develops as I go along, and I can't recall any specific incident that has changed it, but I have altered it as I go along, depending upon the information I get and what people feel about things. Like I say, I try to keep through it. I try to keep plastic so that I can kind of go with what people feel, which is what I think a representative should be.
For our next question, we'll begin with candidate Schaefer. Communication and collaboration with other county and city level elected officials seem important to commissioners' success. If elected, what might you do to maintain or strengthen engagement with other elected officials in the county and the region? You have 1 minute.
That's why I know Ashley is good at that, because she's on DRCOG and a couple of other things. That's how you can do that, is you can do other things alongside of that to help the community to get along. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but the opportunities are available.
Candidate Stoltzman.
Thank you. So yes, I've served on the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and the group unanimously nominated me to serve in several leadership roles, including culminating in being the chair of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is a 58-member group from around our Denver region. In that role, I have the opportunity to work with a lot of different types of thinkers, right? There are libertarians, there are conservatives, there are liberals, there are people that, have more fluid ideologies. And so really getting to talk to each other and connect is important. One thing I'll bring to the county is I hope to be able to rejoin the group called CCI. We currently belong to a group called CCAT, and they're both county organizations that lobby for us at the Capitol. And in Boulder County, we probably don't agree with the ideology of CCI very much at all. But it's a group that lobbies for counties, and it's really important that we connect with the counties around the state because there are some issues we do agree on, and we need to work to help each other. And we need those relationships because there are times that come up where we really do need to be stronger together. And they always say, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
For our next question, we'll begin with candidate Stoltzman, and this will be for 90 seconds. What challenges in District 3 do you feel are a priority for the county government to address? How would you work to understand the challenges facing community members elsewhere in the county? For 90 seconds.
Thank you. That's a great question. So right now in District 3, we really are working on rebuilding from the fire and mitigating for future disasters. There's a lot of work to be done, and people are so underinsured that the struggle is very real. People might have thought, well, the fire happened almost a year ago, so you must be well along the way. People still really need a lot of help and support. And that is a primary focus of county government, making sure that we have better systems in place, getting the mitigation up and running, fixing the dispatch, talking to community members about what's been done to address the deficiencies. So there's a lot to work out there. In other communities, it's really important to connect to other local leaders, and that's in unincorporated areas and in cities. Right now, the mayors, we all meet once a month and talk to each other about our issues. I've been visiting with the city manager and mayor in Longmont to make sure I understand what their particular issues are that are contemporary and up to the date. I'm meeting with Boulder council members and the mayor in Boulder to be sure I understand theirs and the other cities. So I think it's very important to talk to people, to listen to people so that you understand their issues. And it's not just governmental officials. I have a meeting set with the Chamber of Commerce to talk to them about the problems that they're facing, what are the most immediate needs. I was up by Bo's house meeting with some of the farmers on their property. So I just think listening is really critical and opening lines of communication so that even when people disagree, they can bring forward different issues and we can start to work them out together.
Candidate Schaefer for 90 seconds.
Although we are from District 3 and have to reside in District 3, we are actually voted upon by the entire county. So we represent the whole county. And the county is a very diverse place. There's the mountains, there's the plains, there's the cities. And so there's definitely the challenges here are to get together with everybody and coordinate in the county. And that is part of the county commissioner's job, is to kind of act as the glue in between the cities and the glue in between the plains and the mountains. And so when they have differing needs, it's sometimes hard to resolve that. And as Ashley did say, the meetings are important between these. I mean, when I was on the left-hand water board, though, we had to go and call a special meeting with the county commissioners because they weren't getting the message right. The staff was not passing the messages along, so we had to actually call a lunch meeting and get with the commissioners and explain to them, and everything went well after that. So it's not just having the meetings, it's having the meetings with the right people at the right times that can do what needs to be done. And sometimes that works well and sometimes it's not so well, but those are the challenges in the county, is to get, as a libertarian, we talk about herding cats. And so getting people in the county together is a heck of a lot easier than getting libertarians together.
For the next question, we'll start with candidate Schaefer for 1 minute. How will you advocate to bring more county services to the mountain residents to meet them where they are? What might be done to improve transportation countywide?
Okay. What can be done to give more county services? Well, now there, of course, is a touchy question for a libertarian, because we believe that the government that governs best governs least. So the county services that they do provide there to the mountains, they have some unique things like the trash, things like that. But things like water, electricity are kind of their own. As far as the plains go, they got their own little issues like NISP and water control, things like that. There's a lot going on out here. Some the county can deal with, some they're really not. As far as transportation goes, I've never been happy with the transportation system around, but it's not really a county thing. It's more of a RTD thing, although the county can do some things to help mitigate that. But like they're bringing in the light rail and wiping out part of South Longmont to do this, but still progress is there. We need to do that. So transportation needs to be worked on, but the county commissioners have a limited amount of influence there.
Candidate Stoltzman for 1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really important to provide services in a way that people find accessible and can receive them. So, you know, for example, if you were to tell Louisville residents, you've got to go up to Nederland to get food or to get help with healthcare or something like that, you wouldn't serve them. Similarly, you can't tell Nederland residents to come down to Louisville, right? That's just not going to work for them. So we really do need to coordinate with community advocates. There are a lot of nonprofits that are working on this and excellent up in the mountain areas. And we need to talk to the local governments up there to make sure that we understand where the gaps are and that we're meeting people. It's really impressive what has been established in our mountain communities over time, and we need to build on it and foster it further, work with those partnerships and make sure we hear from people if there are gaps. The bus cuts that we've had all over our county are terrible. There are many people that are transit dependent, the Nederland bus, the LX, the FF2, the FF4. These cuts are making it so that people cannot get to their grandmother's house, to their work, to their school. And so we need to work with RTD to get those critical routes restored.
The next question will start with candidate Stoltzman. What steps are you taking to make sure everyone's voice is heard when making decisions as a Boulder County Commissioner? For 1 minute.
Thank you. That's a great question. So when there's decision making happening, it's really important that people know about the decisions that are happening and have opportunity for input. And with social media and electronic access, people really have more access to their elected officials than they ever had. My cell phone number is posted online. My email is posted online. There are lots of opportunities for people to give input, and still sometimes people don't participate. And so just really encouraging community members to make their voice heard through the various channels and to make sure people know about what opportunities they have to get input. One thing that can happen is sometimes in a community conversation, there's multiple perspectives that don't agree with each other. An example I'll use is street lighting. Some people want dark skies so they can see the stars and they want the animals to have a nice night. Other people want more lighting so that they feel safer and that they can see more, in the nighttime. Those two people might live right next door to each other. So just because your voice is heard doesn't mean you'll necessarily get exactly what you want. So it's also important to convey that to community members so they know why there was or was not a change made.
For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Stoltzman.
I don't think
One more.
Candidate Schaefer had a chance.
Candidate Schaefer, my mistake. There you go.
And an interesting question too for me. What steps am I taking to see that other voices are heard? I'm running for office. That's pretty much my major step for this. And Ashley is definitely right. It's communication to the people. You've got to be able, we're representative government. Everybody talks about a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a representative government. We're a republic. And so we have the representatives that we have to trust to make these right decisions for us. And the only way that these representatives can make the right decisions is if they listen to the people. and listen to them on social media, listen to them in the telephones and the newspapers and on the street corners. And so get the feel for the community, and that's the idea behind representative government, that the representative should represent all the people, and it's not easy. So like Ashley was saying, you got some people like light, some people like dark. And so how do you balance that? And that's where the representative comes in, to try to educate everybody so that they can make the right choices.
For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Schaefer. Fewer people living in Boulder County are able to find affordable housing in the county and are moving out to the geographic margins or even to other surrounding counties. What more or what differently do you think commissioners should do to help curb the skyrocketing costs of living here? You have 90 seconds.
Ooh, a long answer question on that, because there's a lot involved in this. A lot of it has to do with county open space, in my opinion. I've watched it over the years, over the 35 years that I've lived around here, and the 5 years I was in school around here. I've watched the open space take over. Why we keep voting for open space? Because the more open space we have, the more the other property is worth, because there's no other property to develop anymore. And I mean, I've been here in this house behind me here in this ranch for 25 years. We bought it for $200,000. It's now worth $1 million. This is why is the property values increased so much in Boulder County? You can't buy a 5-acre foot in Boulder County. Everything has to be 35 acres now, that's a little rough too. So, I mean, there are some conditions out there that have made things hard to get along if you don't have money in Boulder County, but the people that have money get along fine in Boulder County. So there's a balance there that a lot of it is coming, a lot of the pressures though are not coming from this, they're coming from people from outside moving into the state, moving into this county. People that work in Denver, that want to live in Meade, and then they want to live in out in Dakota, and now they want to start to live in Longmont. They're spreading out. So, I mean, it's an issue that goes on, but it's hard to deal with, granted, but that's our jobs, and that's what we'll have to do.
Candidate Schaefer, candidate Stoltzman.
Thank you. So the county has a housing strategy which the city signed on to, and that is a target to get to 12% permanently affordable housing. And I'm supportive of the target. We were on a good path, and then boom, the pandemic hit. That really has set us back and made it a harder challenge in front of us and slowed us down on responding to the challenge at hand. So we really have to use the federal funding that has been made available for us to get going on our goal, to really start working year after year, measuring how we're doing on our goal and adding housing that's permanently deed restricted as affordable. This will not look the same in every single application. What works in one area might not work in another. So this is another place where we really have to work with community and listen to community members about how we can get folks close to transit so they don't have to drive if they don't want to, close to grocery stores, with accessibility to jobs and things like that, so that it can help drive down costs, but in a way that community members can be supportive of. And an example I'll give of that is the Kestrel housing that we were able to build collaboratively between Louisville and Boulder County with the County Housing Authority. The community really came out and supported that project. So you hear about people coming out angry about new housing starts and affordable housing. When you engage community members and work together on it, it doesn't have to be that way. And so I think that's the model to take going forward. Really ask communities where they see the need for more units, and then building successful projects together.
For our next question, we'll start with candidate Stoltzman. Air quality in Boulder County is often ranked as unhealthy. What would you do to help prevent pollution and worsening air quality? For 1 minute.
That's a great question. It's not only ranked as unhealthy, it is absolutely unhealthy. There are many days where we get safety advisories that you shouldn't exercise outside. You shouldn't do things outside if you have asthma, like my little niece does. And that's just not acceptable. And we know it's because of the topography and because of all of the pollution we've made over time, but now we've got to fix it. So this means things like accelerating capping oil wells. This is a terrible place to extract oil. It builds up and sits here. We deal with the pollution from it. And like I said, then we're told you can't go outside. And the reason so many people love it here is because of the outdoors. This means helping people be able to transition into an electric vehicle. We know we have tremendous amounts of emissions from the cars that we drive because they have combustion engines in them. So we've got to help people be able to switch over to electric vehicles at a faster rate. We've got to help people be able to take transit. And building emissions, as controversial as it feels, it really saves people money and reduces emissions. Building emissions account for over 40% of our emissions. So we got to get to work on all those things.
Candidate Schaefer.
Air quality in Boulder is a heck of a lot better than it is just over the ridge over in Denver and over on the I-25 corridor, where a lot of the pollution actually comes from. And as Ashley pointed out, oil wells, they're a big contributor. The internal combustion engine is on its way out. That's pretty much given these days, and those of us in the ecological community. And so we need to prepare for that. Yes, to get electric vehicles, to get muscle-powered vehicles. The kinetic conveyance race comes to mind, of course. But those are the things that are all pretty much personal decisions. The government can kind of initiate some things by offering some incentives and education, but there's no way that I would go along with the government forcing people into things like this. They need to learn and be educated to the point where they want to do it, and then they will do it and feel good about it and not feel they're forced to do things. So that's the road that I take with that.
For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Schaefer. With an expanding Latino population in Boulder County, what would you do to increase language access for Spanish-speaking people and for people whose primary language is not English or Spanish? You have 1 minute.
Very simple. Provide classes in English. This is really, English is the language of the country. Granted, you speak Spanish. Granted, I speak Spanish somewhat, but when I go to Mexico or places like that, I try to speak their language. They really should learn to speak English. It's good for them. It's good for us. So that's how I would look at it, is educate, offer free classes, approach the old people, approach the young people, approach the schools, get them in bilingual classes, get them out there. But we need to teach them English so that they can get along in places where we don't have the translations and we don't have the things like that. It's like, you know, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach him to fish, he fishes, he lives for the rest of his life. It's the same with the language. We can translate a little bit today and deal with it, or teach you how to get along for the rest of your life.
Candidate Stoltzman.
Thank you. So it's really important that we give people access to participation in whatever stage of learning, whether they're going to learn a new language or not. Everyone needs to be able to participate. And so people to participate fully need to be able to communicate. And that's where language justice comes in. I want to commend the work of Commissioner Loachman. She has advanced our county much farther than we ever would have been without her, through providing much more justice, access on documents that are over a certain printage. It's just required by staff. Interpretation and translation services into Spanish is now just part of the normal routine at the county. And that is thanks to Commissioner Loachman's work and dedication. We're not done yet. There's a lot more to be done. I remember signing students up for our summer reading program at the library. And there was a little boy whose parents both spoke Mandarin and he spoke English. And so he was doing the translation work for his parents to get signed up for summer reading. And they were really lucky to have him, but that puts a lot of pressure on a child as well. So making sure that we have access and include everybody in the community for our government programs and services is critical. And I'm dedicated to keep working on that.
For our next question, This will be our last question for tonight. So we'll start with candidate Stoltzman. What do you want voters to know about your positions on guns and gun safety for 1 minute?
Thank you. So gun violence in Colorado has escalated to extreme levels. My whole life, we have seen violent acts. I was in high school during the Columbine massacre. We saw the terrible Aurora theater shooting, and then even in Boulder County, just at a grocery store, people lost their lives. And it's just enough is enough. Many constitutional scholars throughout time have recognized that within the Second Amendment, there are limitations. The Second Amendment doesn't mean people have access to hand grenades and all kinds of weapons of war. And what our police are fighting against and what our residents are risking their lives against at places like synagogue, school, movie theater, grocery store, is weapons of war. And so in Louisville and around the county, we've taken steps to reasonably regulate firearms so that we can start to regain control and safety in our communities. We need to work together on education, but enough is enough, and we have to take common sense steps to reduce this violence.
Candidate Schaefer for 1 minute.
I think the second part of the question was the key thing. You said guns and gun safety. Gun safety is where it's at. I don't understand the society that can produce someone that can walk into a school and kill 20 kids. I just don't understand a society that can produce that. I don't think it has to do with the availability of guns or a lot of other things. It's the society that we have to work on that can produce someone that thinks that way. And so the gun safety thing, if we taught kids more about the safety of guns rather than let them watch violent things on TV where everybody shoots anybody, I think that would help a fair amount. If you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have them. And every time you outlaw, these are people that want to break the law anyway. They don't care about another law like that they're breaking. We need to educate the society and the people in it to not do these terrible crimes, which is a monumental task. But to try to prohibit it, then you run up against the Second Amendment, right? We have a right to protect ourselves. And I know people that have been against guns and all kinds of, but these days, my next door neighbor's carrying one. She's totally against it. Now she's carrying one. It's a tough world, and we need to be able to deal with it.
Now for our closing statements. We will begin with candidate Schaefer for 1 minute.
In closing, like I say, I'm just here to see if the county would like a different voice in the representation or not. Is there enough voices out there that feel that they want another voice to be represented? Then I'm your man. And I've got nothing against my candidate. I'm sure she'll make a wonderful commissioner too. But in my case, I'm just here to see if there is enough desire in the county for another voice to elect a different voice in the county government.
Candidate Stoltzman for your closing statement.
Thank you so much. I'm very proud to be a Gun Sense candidate endorsed by the Moms Demand Action. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the group Pro-Choice Champions to fight for women's right to healthcare access. I'm very proud to be endorsed by our local union workers. We've got a lot of work to do here in the county, and I'm really thrilled to tell you I have the support of many of the local mayors, Mayor of Boulder, the Mayor of Longmont, former Mayor Netherland, Mayor of Lyons, Mayor Broomfield. And so we're all going to work together to advance Boulder County values and issues. We've got tremendous work ahead of us on helping homeless folks. We really have to work on our housing issues that we talked about a little bit in this forum. Transportation is not where it needs to be. We've been really set back by the pandemic in many of these areas. Climate is the area that I am most passionate about, and Boulder County is positioned perfectly to lead the way on reducing carbon emissions and taking climate action so we can show other communities how it's done. And I hope I can be the county commissioner that helps our community do those things.
Okay. On behalf of the League and our co-sponsor, the YWCA of Boulder County, I would like to thank our candidates for not only their participation in tonight's forum, but also for their participation in the democratic process. Running for office and serving as an elected official is hard work, and we really appreciate your efforts. Thank you to our League Candidate Forum volunteers, and a huge thank you goes to our 2022 election sponsors, Big Red F Restaurant Group, Christina's Luxuries, Elevations Credit Union, High Plains Bank, Lion Gaddis Attorneys at Law, and Simmons Family Fund. And finally, thanks to the Boulder County voters participating as viewers. It's up to all of us to make sure we respect and work to protect our democratic processes. Too many people have struggled to win these rights for us not to use them. It starts with being an informed and active voter. Before signing off, I would like to alert voters that tonight's forum, as well as many others, will be available on the League's website at lwvbc.org, as well as the YouTube channel for the League of Women Voters, Boulder County, and vote411.org. Vote 411 is the League's premier voter information guide that supplies nonpartisan information on state and local candidates, ballot issues and questions, and much more. Resources are available on Vote 411 in both English and Spanish. The League of Women Voters of Boulder County works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend democracy. If you would like to lend your time and skills to encourage civic engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. All the information you need is at www.lwvbc.org. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Dominus Vobiscum.
Thank you all. Nice to see you, Bo.
Hey, Ashley.